So WrestleMania XL Night 2 is in the books, and this is WrestleJuice, so we're going to look at your hot takes today. I got to tell you, not a lot of heat behind these hot takes, largely because this thing was so universally praised across the internet wrestling community. So there's not a lot of controversial takes here, a lot of praise for the product. We're going to go ahead and dive into your thoughts. If you want my star ratings, they're available right now over at the Friendo Club Wrestling channel. I'm going to have the thing, I think it's over here. You can do that. Or if you want my review of WrestleMania XL Night 2 in podcast form, I'll put that I forget if it's over here. I think it's this one over here. Could be wrong about that, though. Anyways, you can check those out right now the Going and Raw Friendo Club channels. But this is WrestleJuice. We're going to dive into your hot takes. Let's go ahead and do it. There we go. Braden Loader. This was the most thumbs up take we've got here. And he says, Roman picking to hit Seth over Cody was the greatest example of long-term storytelling in wrestling history. So over the last couple of years, especially with the Sami Zayn stuff, there's been a lot of comments. I've noticed the narrative being the Bloodline storyline is the greatest story in the history of pro wrestling. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. I wasn't really watching a lot back in the 1950s, and I wasn't really watching a whole lot back in the 1960s. It's a different business today than it was then, though. I do know that. But I'm willing to say that in the modern era, at least since wrestling became popularized in 1985 thanks to WrestleMania, and when I say popularized, I mean mainstream, national, whatever you want to call it, had jumped out of the territory days. Yes, this is probably the greatest story in the history of pro wrestling. From beginning, when the tribal chief showed up, hell, you could go back to Seth Rollins' betrayal of Roman Reigns and the Shield, all the way up to the tribal chief, all the way up to now Cody Rhodes taking the title off of Roman Reigns and ending the reign of the tribal chief. It's been 4 years that he's been champion, and what a reign it's been. And the original sin of Seth Rollins turning on Roman Reigns and their stories in parallel, and Roman Reigns making that fatal error. The bloodline's gone. It's just him, the future of Cody Rhodes, and his past of Seth Rollins. And he opted to go with Seth Rollins, and Seth in that Shield gear with the chair, and Seth selling the shot the same way Roman Reigns did with the arms out and all that kind of stuff. Almost Jesus-like. You gotta say that's probably the best example of long-term storytelling in wrestling history. I think you obviously need a little bit of, time between the event and some historical context. But I kind of feel like we're going to get that down the line when you look back on this moment. It probably will be. That being said, I feel like this is the kind of thing that we can expect from here on out, assuming the same creative minds sort of stay with the company, assuming Triple H remains with the company and keeps on telling these stories. I get the feeling he's probably got a lot of great ideas that he's itching to tell using WrestleMania, this grand canvas that he has now. Definitely one for the ages, though. And I might agree with this, Braden. I might agree with this. Roman choosing to hit Seth instead of Cody might be the greatest example of long-term storytelling because it meant so much in the moment. B-Man the Champ says, I will put that main event up against any other one. It was so cathartic. Thank you, Hunter, for making us feel rewarded for sticking through all of this. It was. You could tell when Cody brought Roman up for that third Crossroads and we all knew what was going to happen. There was that moment there that was just, it was just all catharsis. And then Samantha starts crying and announces the winner. Oh, man, it was so good. Any other main event? I don't know. There's two that come to mind. There's two main events that come to mind. One, of course, was Daniel Bryan winning at WrestleMania 30. And the other one was a year later, Seth Rollins cashing in. Those were big time moments. But they also, the Daniel Bryan one was the culmination of some long-term storytelling. I'm talking about about 8 months or so of storytelling anyways, when the crowd really started getting behind him. And Seth cashing in was just a perfect moment, interrupted, yet another Brock Roman situation, and there were still plenty more to come. But Seth Rollins being that breath of fresh air at 31. Otherwise, other main events, I don't know, man. You got to figure Toronto 1990. Look, I get it. I understand. It's Hogan Warrior. But, man, people really went crazy for that because you didn't think it was going to happen. Like, that's kind of crazy. But yeah, no, that main event, that was pretty special, man. That was pretty special. Definitely had the Avengers Endgame feel to it. I've seen this take a lot. I kind of agree with it. Patty Swan says, oh, come back here. The Jimmy and Jay scuffle during the main event was literally better than their entire match on night one. Yeah, that's got to probably stick to them. I would think they're going to want a rematch, if for no other reason to show that they can really bring a banger match to a pay-per-view. So I get the feeling we're going to get a Jimmy J redo. I really do. I think that they probably pay attention to the fact that everybody's saying, that was kind of a crap match. And they're going to get a redo. I'm looking forward to it too, because I think they could probably do a hell of a match. Just for whatever reason, it didn't come together on night one. Scottish Bisque says, hot take, the Drew Seth pre-segment was probably a top 5 opener in Mania history. I'd have to go back and look at other openers in Mania history because like none really spring to mind. Like the Seth Rollins RKO out of a stomp for Randy Orton at 31 was a pretty big deal. I swear I'm acting like 31 is the only Wrestlemania I know about. But I'd have to go back and look. But I don't know. It'd be really difficult to beat that. That entire segment, the match itself, I thought was awesome. Opening with that sense of urgency, the Claymore, all the way up through the cash-in and CM Punk in the middle there, you know, using some physicality, which I didn't think he'd be able to. Holy crap. That was something special. I was thoroughly entertained the entire time. Awesome job by everybody. Broski says KO should have won the U.S. title tonight and had his Benoit Guerrero moment with Sammy holding the mid-card titles. I thought we were going to get that, especially when Sammy showed up at Gorilla at the end there. Or I'm sorry, when Kevin Owens was backstage and he's about to make his entrance. We have Sami Zayn. The reverse of what happened. I thought it was a foregone conclusion. I thought Kevin Owens was going to win that match, and he didn't. Logan Paul came out of that. I don't know where they're going to go with the U.S. title now. I know Larson had the idea that Logan Paul should be the first guy to challenge Cody Rhodes. I think it'd be a great idea. I think it'd be pretty awesome. But yeah, Kevin Owens and Sammy having their Benoit Guerrero moment, that'd be pretty cool. I kind of feel like they don't necessarily need it, though, because they had last year's moment where they won the tag titles in the main event of night one. I don't think they'll ever get a bigger WrestleMania moment than that. That was a really special moment. But yeah, I totally thought, and Kevin Owens still might win that U.S. title. But I kind of figured that there was a good chance that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens would come out of WrestleMania this year, both the mid-card titles. I had predicted that ages ago. Didn't come to pass, though. If not, this is a hot take, says The Rock looked like Fat Elvis in his gear. Okay, so the gear was definitely from the Fat Elvis era, but there's no way you can say The Rock looked like he was in anything other than amazing shape. But yeah, it definitely had Elvis vibe to it, and I was kind of here for it. I thought it looked amazing. Nobody BP5WH says Mania 40 Night 2 is better than Mania X7. You know, man, I got to go back and watch this Mania X7 because everybody talks about Mania 17 as like the greatest WrestleMania of all time. I hated the finish, but maybe the finish to the main event at Mania X7 was like just a stain for me, and I forgot about how good the rest of it was. I'll have to go back and watch it because I know traditionally everybody says, oh, that's a great one. I think I had a better time watching Mania 40 Night 2 than I did Mania 17. Maybe I'll go back and watch it again. I don't know. That was the one where they had the WCW C team there in the rafters, right? Or in the suites. Calvin Barnhill has a good point. Says, I want to see Snoop Dogg commentate every match forever. I agree. I thought he was amazing in that street fight. He brought so much more entertainment value to what was already a pretty entertaining match. Snoop Dogg was great. It was like watching the street fight with him in my living room. Josh, the greatest one, says Samantha Irving is hands down the best ring announcer and professional wrestler ever. She's amazing. I agree. I kind of feel like Lillian Garcia is a close second. And then I know everybody loves Fink, and Fink is great, but he's no Samantha Irvin. True Ozzy 26 says watching Cody win from the crowd was great, but what made the night even more emotional for me was looking over to the stage and seeing Roman and Paul genuinely hugging for a long time while off camera / broadcast. I've seen the fan footage of that, and yes, it is very emotional, and I can't imagine what's going through Roman Reigns' head. This guy has basically sacrificed so much to bring this company to where it's at on his shoulders. And the man really should be commended. I think he's going to be a massive babyface going forward. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but there's no way the crowd's going to react to Roman in any way, shape, or form other than we love this guy. Mission accomplished. Anime fan says, I'm glad we're all wrong about letting the time clock down for Damian because it makes Drew's story about paying attention to only him that much more tragic now. The Drew McIntyre situation was absolutely amazing. Wins the title in front of everybody, gets that moment with his wife, and then he lets his obsession with CM Punk get the best of him, and we get that amazing cash-in moment. Oh, boy, that was amazing. And, yeah, they picked the perfect moment for Damian Priest. Oh, this is a true hot take. Dan Frampton says the Cody mask was awesome. Bonus cold take, Samantha Irvin's the best in-ring announcer ever to do it. Dan, you actually nailed the hot cold take. Look at that. Because Samantha Irvin, I think we can all agree, is the best to ever do it. And that hot take, Cody mask was awesome. Man, oh man, I couldn't disagree with that more. I thought that shit looked so bunk. I thought it looked like it was 3D printed, and he looked self-conscious wearing it, even though you couldn't even see his eyes. And it's like he couldn't wait for Brandy to take that stupid thing off him. But Dan, I appreciate your hot take because it's a great one. The Cody mask was awesome. I love it, Dan. Thank you very much. Goliath says the excuse of an open-air stadium is null and void. Night 2 had a better crowd than Night 1. Larson had speculated that maybe, just maybe, because, yeah, Night 2, listen, that crowd Night 2 was given a lot more to work with. From what I understand, it wasn't quite as cold, but I think that first thing is mainly it. But also, maybe, just maybe, WWE mic'd them up a little bit better. That's possible, because, like, I still feel like the sound travels up and then leaves as opposed to bounces back down. That being said, Night 2 sounded amazing. That crowd was great. They were also just given a lot more to work with. And yeah, maybe WWE work harder on that Night 1, man. Oh, here's one I kind of agree with. Adam says the Bloodline Rules match wasn't overbooked enough. Nearly everyone who hit the ring post-match could have had some role mid-match, and I would have been glad to see it. I kind of agree with this. I thought it was going to be overbooked even more. I thought it was going to be a lot more overbooked, just to a ridiculous degree. And they kept it very story-based. Jimmy comes out, is run off by Jay. Solo comes out, yells at Roman to finish it. And Roman's like, I know, being kind of annoyed with Solo as he's been in the past. And Solo looking down on Roman. And then John Cena, the guy who had his voice box murdered by Solo, makes sense for him to be there and run Solo off. The only one, obviously, we know that didn't make tons of sense, but you can say that maybe he's upset about the streak ending thanks to Paul Heyman or Roman Reigns declaring it's his yard. Undertaker attacking Rock instead of Stone Cold. And apparently an attempt was made to get Stone Cold, and Undertaker, sort of filled in that role, but there's tons of history there. So, and the people went absolutely batshit crazy for it. But if that glass would have broke, oh my God, that would have been absolutely insane. We needed more Rikishi. If Rikishi came down and then Stone Cold came out to Rikishi, oh, that'd have been something special. Right Now and Later says Drew McIntyre could have been World Heavyweight Champion for longer than 10 minutes if he just walked away from CM Punk after his win. I know. And that's the beautiful thing about it. That is the absolutely beautiful thing about it, is that in the end, and that's the great thing about the characters now in WWE, is they act logically within the boundaries of their own characters' weaknesses and strengths. And that is storytelling. Brandon Monroe says, I legitimately thought Mox was coming out with Seth when the Shield music hit. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Brandon. I kind of did too. Even though, it made zero sense. For some reason, my brain still went there. For a second, I thought all three of them were going to come out, even though one of them was in the ring. W. Stein says the same thing. When I heard the Shield theme, I thought it was a lunatic Fringe Dean Ambrose. Why do we all collectively think that was a possibility? There's no possibility of that happening, and yet everybody thought that. Allman says, can someone explain why LA Knight came down for Cody's celebration? How are they connected? He looked out of place out of all the people there. He looked like he didn't want to be there. Somebody made the joke on our live stream that somebody gave him 50 extra bucks to go down there. And that really made me laugh. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they had some interaction before, but not a ton. Yeah. Paige Harris here says Undertaker had no business in this match. Sure, Roman beat him at Mania 33 7 years ago. Taker has not had any sort of interaction with the tribal chief, let alone address the loss with Roman at all during the Bloodline storyline. Why would he wait this long to confront Reigns? It's just a cool moment. I think that's going to be the one thing that down the line people are like, yeah, but what about Undertaker? And everybody else is going to be like, hey, you know what? It was awesome. It was cool. And you could point to tons of history there, including the Mania 33 thing, where Roman showed up later and said, this is my yard now. I don't know. It's kind of, and you could look at the streak being ended too, but I get the point. I get the point. It was a cool moment meant for Stone Cold, which in my opinion, Stone Cold actually makes a little bit less sense than The Undertaker, if you kind of think about it. Undertaker's sort of been in the orbit of WWE lately, and Stone Cold hasn't been around in like 2 years. Like he did the voiceover for the Bray thing. He showed up in NXT not that long ago. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like Undertaker had more business in the match than Stone Cold, but Stone Cold would have been pretty awesome. Lance Gilmore says, as someone who's ODE, does that mean owed and lived through the Attitude Era? How does the current era compare as far as permeating pop culture and capturing the zeitgeist? I'm owed to. It's difficult these days. It's a different beast. Pop culture is simply a different animal these days than it was back then. Back then, man, we had like, what, I don't know, a couple hundred channels on cable. Most of us had packages with like 50 or 60 channels on cable. TV Guide was a thing. Magazines were like a thing. Internet was barely a thing. I mean, it was a thing, but it wasn't that much of a thing. Social media certainly was not a thing. Media is consumed in a much different way. If you've noticed, I've heard it been referred to as the one culture, where back 20 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there was a popular culture where everybody knew what the top 10 songs were on the Billboard charts because we listened to radio. And if we wanted a song, we'd have to buy a CD, right? And everybody knew what movies were coming out. People would flock to the movie theaters in droves. It ain't like that anymore. Everything pop culture, everything entertainment, I should say, is consumed in a different way. I still haven't seen The Iron Claw because I know probably in a week from now, it's going to be free on one of the streaming services. Same could be said for like Killers of the Flower Moon. Because that came back in 1998. You know, I probably stood in line to go see Casino in 95. And I would have done the same for any Scorsese movie back then. Now I know I can get it on a giant TV out there, and I don't have to do that. I can watch clips of stuff on YouTube. I can watch entire movies on any number of streaming services or websites or whatever. Things are so niche down these days that there is no singular pop culture anymore. I look at the Billboard charts, and granted, I'm owed as well. I barely know 10% of the people who are on the pop music charts or the rock music charts. I don't really know of many bands anymore because the way music is made and consumed and produced and distributed is so much different now than it was back then. Music labels would put tons of money behind marketing of certain acts, and they'd put a bunch of money into music videos, and they put a bunch of money into albums, like entire albums and marketing. They don't do that anymore. They're not trying to get everybody. They're trying to get enough to make their money back and then some, because they know they can't get everybody because there's too much competition. So permeating the pop culture, good luck with that. I think they permeate enough to get way bigger deals now than they did back then. And they've mainstreamed enough to get Slim Jim sponsors and American Home Shield sponsors and Wingstop sponsors. But it's different. So in terms of comparing, I don't know, there is a comparison. Back then, there was just so much less noise, so you can get your signal across a lot easier. So anyways, from one owed guy to another, thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. Where is she? I just heard her growling. She's down here. She's been very growly today. What are you doing? Why are you so growly? Where's your little face? Oh, there it is. There's your face. What? What? Okay. Be sure to hit that sub.